Hey, it's your transitional life coach here, Tiara Nicole Riley, motivational speaker, five-time published author, and owner of Rethinking Me, a life coaching firm. I am continuing in our business development series, and I want to talk about something that I get a lot of questions about. A lot of questions. So I'm going to try to answer a lot of the common questions. But of course, if you get any additional questions, just put them in the comments. Like let's talk about it. Let's get into it in the comments, okay? So, being that I am a five-time published author, I get a lot of questions about writing a book. Let me just start by saying a lot of people have books in them that the world needs. A lot of people. A lot of people. If you feel that it like in your gut, like feeling like, ooh, I should, you should. You should. And I'm not saying this to say that I don't ever get like imposter syndrome or feeling like, well, who's going to read my book and why do people care and things like that. And I also get a lot of criticism on being so open and honest in my book. And honestly, particularly from family, I get a lot of people, especially family members, trying to censor me and telling me that I shouldn't be so open and I shouldn't be so honest about the things that I've experienced. But in my opinion and in my experience, for every one person that has said something along the lines of like, why are you being so honest, you're putting too much information out there for the public consumption, I get three people who reach out to me directly and say, oh my God, thank you for your honesty, thank you for your transparency, I'm so grateful that you shared your story, and then they feel comfortable sharing their story with me. So that's my why, and it's rooted in my story helping people, right? So, for context, how my first book came to be, which my first book was 23 and Finally Loving Me. However, it started as a journal. I really just spent a year and just journaled and chronicled um, life, right? And really took the time to just heal and grow and develop in every area of my life. And it was just a journal for years, for years. And then I remember hearing clear as day God telling me to like just type it, just type it. So I said, okay. So I typed it up and turned it into a book format and still didn't do anything with it. Then a woman at my church, we were in like a small group or whatever, and she came to me and she came to the group and stated that her daughter was feeling depressed and suicidal and she didn't know how to help her daughter. Depression and suicide are things that I have dealt with personally. So I went up to her after the group and I said, hey, I've dealt with these things as well. If there's anything I can do, let me know. Gave her my number, etc. Maybe about a week or two later, she called me saying that her daughter had been date raped and it triggered her suicidal thoughts and attempts, and she was hospitalized and all these things. And I was able to talk to her in a way that her daughter couldn't, in a way that I couldn't when I was experiencing those things. Now, I didn't know her daughter, right? But I was able to say, like, when I was going through my depression feeling, experience, I wish my mom would have done this, or I wish I would have been able to say that, or I wish I had access to this, or I wish, whatever. And I was able to give her perspective and insight and feedback in a way that when you're deep in it, you can't really communicate that. And I remember getting off of the phone with her and for the first time in my life, feeling grateful to have had that experience because it allowed me to help somebody else, right? And at the conclusion of that, I was really, really grateful that I had already typed up the book, and I was able to send her and her daughter an electronic copy. Um, which random side note, this is why when you hear God telling you to do something, it doesn't have to make sense to you in that moment, but you need to do it. Had I not been obedient to typing it, even though it didn't make sense, even though I didn't understand why, if had I not been obedient to type it, I would not have had that as an available resource to her. Anyways, so after that experience, I realized that my story could help people. And so I went forward with the process of publishing the book as an official book. So know your why, but be obedient. Because that story you've been sitting on could help people, but it's stuck in your head. So, for the rest of this, I am going to give you some tactical things that you can do to get the book out of your head and into our hands. Because we need it, okay? Get out of your head and get it in our hands. That's it. That's the post. But I'm going to help you with some tactical ways to get that done, okay? Cool, cool, cool. The number one piece of advice I always have for people who are looking to write a book but kind of getting writer's block and things like that: create a book outline. That sounds so simple, but it is such a game changer. Create a book outline and draft what the titles are, or the chapters are, right? So when you start to sit down to write the book, and you're like, okay, I want it to flow in this direction. I want to hit this point. I want to talk about this. I want to talk about that. I want to talk about that. What are you saying? Right? Like, really have an understanding of what it is that you want to say on a grand scale. So, outline the chapters. I use Word documents, but I literally have chapter one is going to be this, chapter two is going to be that, da da da. The biggest benefit to having this outline is because it allows you to ebb and flow wherever you're feeling passionate to talk about without the story being jumbled, right? Because a lot of times, the reason we're getting like writer's block is because we're trying. Your heart is in chapter 7, but your hands are in chapter 2, and you don't want to skip 3 through 6 to talk about 7 because you feel like the story is going to get lost. But if you have that outline available, it's not going to get lost, and you can go to the chapters that you're passionate about, right? Like, and that's the best thing you can do for writer's block. Go where you're feeling the passion in that moment, and I truly believe that that translates as well. Cool. With that being said, another thing that slows down the process and often stops the process is trying to edit as you go. A lot of times you just need to brain dump. Just dump it. Get it out of your head, get it out of your brain. Brain dump the book. Just type, 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 right? And then when it's done, you have the opportunity to reread it and go through and say, okay, I didn't mean to say that, or I wanted to say this, or this isn't translating how I wanted it to say, right? But do that at the end. Wait until you're done to actually like do that. But at some point, you just have to start. Just start. Okay? Just start. The quickest time it took me to actually publish a book, like 2 to 3 months. Not gonna lie. The longest time was 23 and finally loving me. But that I made the decision to take a year to journal my life. You know what I mean? So like it is what it is. But the quickest book I wrote was in like 90 days. Get the outline going, start, edit after you're done, and then get a professional editor because you can't edit your own work. Even if you are well educated and you are a PhD in writing, I still don't want you editing your own work because you know what you meant to say and your brain will translate for you because you know what you meant, right? You need fresh eyes to look at it, period. Non negotiable. And the other thing that you can do is actually schedule time to write. A lot of times we don't plan for it. You think the inspiration and the motivation is going to come. Sometimes you just need to silence your phone and write. Honestly, truly. And as I'm sitting here, it's funny because a common question I always get is like, what's the next book? And I've always tried to write books that I feel led to write. And funny enough, as I'm recording this video, I literally feel in my spirit what the next book is. It's ridiculous. It is absolutely ridiculous how this works, but I am actively working on and just who I am as a business owner. I always try to do what I feel God telling me to do. So the fact that as I'm recording this video about publishing a book, God has clarified what the next book is. Stay tuned. I love it. I love it here. Anyways, my final recommendation is to get. I'm going to reserve my opinion on the recommendation until I explain the next part. Another common question I get is self publishing versus using a traditional publisher. The biggest difference between the two is that publishers pretty much own the material, is the easiest way to describe it. However, when you self publish, you own 100% of the proceeds, all of that. You own 100% of the creative rights. You own 100% of the words. Like everything is you, whereas not so much with a publisher. However, here's the kicker. When you self-publish, every book I have ever sold is because I put it in someone's hands. Every book. Whereas with publishers, you have the company also helping to sell the book. Right? So there's the difference there. You have to do your own marketing, you have to do your own promotion, you have to figure out the systems and processes that work for you. It's just what it is. With that being said, I have self-published all of my books. However, I've used a self-publishing company. What does that mean? Basically, I contract out the work of publishing it itself. The editing, the ISBN, the finalization, the copyright, all of those things. The self-publishing company that I used for my books have been Divine Legacy Publishing. They are the ones that are doing the work to get it published, but it's still my book. So it's still a self-published experience. So they are a self-publishing company. I basically pay them like a contractor, a flat rate. They don't get any percentage of anything that I sell, whereas with a publisher, that's a lifetime relationship. Every book you sell, you owe them a percentage. Even if I went to a speaking engagement and sold those books, I still owe them a percentage. I ain't like that too much. And above all, I just didn't like them having the right to like the creative voice either. Whereas with a self-publishing company, any changes that they make have to be approved by me. And even with the editor, right? Like they make suggestions like, hey, this doesn't read clearly, like what was your intention here? As opposed to with the editor, they have the right to make whatever adjustments they want and go from there. Ultimately, it's your choice. It's your book, right? But the choice that I have made for me and my books have been self-publishing. And I hope that helps. If there are additional questions, drop them in the comments. I'm available as a resource. I want to help people get books because we need these books out there. We need it. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments. If you have not already subscribed to the channel, like, what are we doing? What are we doing? You clearly are getting content that you enjoy. Just hit subscribe and hit the notification bell so you're the first one to know when the episode is dropped. Thanks, guys.